So I don't know where half looks like half of our classes.
Can we start?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Ready, team?
Ready.
Everybody.
Yes,
All right. Good evening, everyone. We are Group 1, and we are welcoming you to our presentation this evening on performance management at Network Solutions, Inc. Our dynamic group members are Susan Ganga Singh, Marka White, Antonio Muirhead, Rashima Gonzalez, Paula Henry Hall, Cashel Finley, and myself, Chantal Artwell. We crave your full attention and participation and look forward to a healthy discussion afterwards in our question and answer section after we've completed our presentation. But before we jump into the meat of the matter, let me give you a briefly just a little bit of background as it relates to the case that we were assigned. The case that we were assigned is case 1 to 2 from the book Performance Management by Anguinis, titled Performance Management at Network Solutions, Inc. And that can be found on page 31 of the book. Now, Network Solutions, Inc. is the main event in this case. It's a fictitious name that was given to this specific company to, protect the company, the real company. It is a hardware, software, and services essential to computer networking. Now, these are a few issues that brought about the new implementation of the system that we're about to talk about. Now, this company, until very recently, this company used, now wait for it, listen very closely, they used 50 different performance management systems. You heard right, 50 different performance management systems. And many of their team members did not receive a review. Now you have 50 different performance management systems and your team is not receiving reviews. Now, fewer than 5% of all of these employees received the lowest category rating. They did not have any rewards program for high achievers. Performance problems were also not addressed. They had an increase in cost as it relates to managing human performance because of the inefficiencies. There were quality initiatives that were applied throughout the organization, but what was being recognized is that nothing was basically being done to the performance management. There was not an established global cross-divisional HR team. And finally, the senior leaders were developing their own systems. Now, all these issues led up to the CEO of Network Solutions, Inc. basically announcing that he wanted to implement a force distribution performance management system. This system will see to a percentage of employees classified in different categories. Now, how this works is a rating of 1 for the first top 20% of the performance, a rating of 2 for the middle 70% of the performance, and a rating of 3 for the bottom 10%. Right? So they also implemented a global cross-dimensional HR team to both design and implement the new system that they're trying to implement as a company. This HR body was tasked with building a business case by showing that the organizational strategy up top was connected, if carried on properly to the team performance, it also connected to the team contributions, which would then be translated to the business overall achieving all their goals or meeting their goals. Now, Network Solutions Inc., the main reason why they wanted to implement this was basically to raise the bar of how they did performance management. They also wanted to identify and retain the top talent. We're talking about the people who would be in the 1% and the 2% who were high performers. Now, the design team has the support of leadership, and that's something that's very important that we must note. They also were encouraged to they were recommended to use the system, as well as to stop using the others that they would have been using before. Because you know, more than likely it's familiarity, and so you'd want to use something that you know. They were also asked to promote the effectiveness of this, and why was it so good for the company. Now, the new system consisted of a few things: goal cascading and team building, performance planning, and development planning, outgoing discussions and update this between both the managers and the employees, and an annual performance summary. They had training resources. So, you know, an intranet. What they had was an intranet where the intranet provided training materials for the managers as well as individual contributors. And it also had some forms and so on. They also had 1 to 2 hour conference calls before the start of each phase. At the time of the writing of this specific case that we're talking about, they were at the third stage, of which I just mentioned. They were at the development planning phase. Now, the force distribution system that we just spoke about, classification would be the lowest rating. Once you score 3, then you would get time to improve your performance. If you did not improve your performance, you could either leave the company or you could. And a PIP is a performance improvement plan. If you still did not do good, they would, let you go. If you were a part of number 2, then you'd be rewarded with salary increases, stock options, getting stocks in the company, as well as bonuses. And it would be the same thing for number 1, right? And finally, going forward, the plan is to reinforce needed cultural change to support the force distribution ratings and implementing the policies. Now, my team would go ahead and talk about the overlap between the network solution system and the ideal system, which I just spoke about. The features of the system implemented at Network Solutions, description of the system at Network Solutions. They go more in depth in it. They'd also talk about the advantages and positive outcomes, as well as the anticipated disadvantages and negative outcomes. I'll now send over the mic to Marco, who will talk about the overlap between the Network Solutions system and the ideal system.
Thank you, Shanta. Now, before getting into the overlap, I'd just like to talk a bit about performance management. Now, performance management is a continuous process of identifying, measuring, and developing the performance of individuals and teams, and aligning this performance with the strategic goals of the organization. Now, there are 2 main aspects of any performance management system, and that is a continuous process and the alignment with the strategic goals. Now, Network Solutions, in an effort to fulfill these aspects, had an overlap with the ideal performance management system. Now, before I get into the overlap, it's important to note that it is very difficult to implement the perfect system. You have things like the company size, which may not allow alignment to every employee goals and cost of putting in the system. So it's very difficult to implement the perfect system, but the aim is to get as close as you can to implementing the system. Okay, now the first overlap that I will speak about today is performance planning. Now, not just performance planning, but performance planning through strategy, which helps goal cascading. Now, the system allows employees' goals to be aligned with the objectives of the organization. The managers are the link between the individual and the organization, and we use goal cascading, which is the breakdown of goals from top to bottom, aligning everyone, which helps the company to operate to ensure achievement of goals. So it's breaking down every goal from the objective of the organization to the objective of the employee at every level to ensure that there is connectivity between all aspects. The second is employee performance execution. Now, this is where the employees actually do the performance that they will be assessed by at the end of the year. But in this process, in this aspect, there is a continuous communication about the performance of the employee, which helps them to know what is necessary to address how they perform, to improve performance as they go along. And this helps with development. So this is where the employee and the managers communicate about what is happening, how can they improve. Now, the next step is employee performance assessment, which is the rating system, which was employed by Network Solutions. Now, the rating system is basically identifying ineffective and effective performance. And it is done through a system of standardization, which results in consistency. So this was what Shanta was speaking about with the rating from 1 to 3. Now, this reduces subjectivity, and the nature of the assessment shows employees exactly in which area they need to improve to keep in track and have an improved performance. Now, this directly aligns with the ideal system as it factors in development of the employee. It helps the employee to grow, and as such helps the company to grow. Another aspect is development planning. Now, this is the programs put in place to enhance employee production, such as the intranet. During development planning, this is where training resources are used. When tasks are deemed to be unproductive, both managers and employees need to get together to be able to place the company back on a competitive track. Training allows changes to be made and proper techniques to be introduced and reinforced in order for the system to be as efficient as possible. Now, the final aspect is employee performance review. Now, this is the summary of the past year to identify the strengths and weaknesses recorded through the period of assessment. It is at this stage that the course of action for the next year will be decided. This is done through looking at appraisals, both appraisals, not just the manager's appraisal, but also the employee's self-appraisal, putting it together and addressing the gaps. The gaps not only in both appraisals, but in where the company expects the employee to be. This results in good communication and encourages fairness and justice because of the relationship it creates between the employees and the managers, and a good work environment will be created. So the summarization and the discussion of the regular checks will help both the employee and the organization to create future planning. So this is where we look at what has been done throughout the year and plan what will happen in the next year and how the company will improve. I will now pass to Cashel, who will identify the characteristics that were used in the system, in the network solution system.
Thank you, Marco. Now, there are 15 characteristics within an ideal performance management system, namely strategic congruence, context congruence, thoroughness, practicality, meaningfulness, specificity, identification of effective and effective performance, reliability, validity, acceptability and fairness, inclusiveness, openness, correctability, standardization, and ethicality. Now, Aguinis 2013 posited that ideal performance management systems are unusual because there are a number of compromises that take place in the real world context. However, the more aligned an organization's performance management system is to the ideal system, the greater the impact on employees and the organization as a whole. Ideal systems include, and what I'll be doing here, I'll be looking at the characteristics that were present in network solution, I will be looking at the characteristics from an ideal performance management system that was present for Network Solutions, Inc. So the first one, strategic congruence. This speaks to an alignment of the employees' goals with the department's and organizational strategy, that is ensuring the responsibilities and duties of the employee supports the goals the organization has set. The performance management system put in place by Network Solutions required employee goals and objectives to be aligned with the organization's strategy. So we're seeing strategic congruence reflected in their system. Thoroughness. Network Solutions approach required that an assessment be done for all staff for the complete review period. Additionally, they intended to continuously monitor the process with a plan to adjust their policies and processes where needed. Practicality. The HR team responsible for designing the program were aware of the work that would be required to implement such a change. They took the approach of gaining the buy-in from the different leaders within the organization and tasked them with also gaining the buy-in from their team members. Network Solutions was also cognizant that in order for the implementation to be successful, an organizational cultural change was necessary. As such, they prioritize continuous communication of the program's objectives to their employees. Meaningfulness. Network Solutions Performance Management System allowed for continuous training for the leaders who were responsible for evaluating the employees. Additionally, the results of the assessment should be used to identify where each employee performed, whether a top performer, a bottom performer, or a mid-level performer. Employees who were out of the top performance tier would have the opportunity for development. Identification of effective and ineffective performance. Network Solutions Performance Management System and the associated communication and training delivered to the staff explain the purpose of the process, how to ensure the desired outcome was achieved, and the associated consequences. Reliability. The rollout of the new process included communication and training of the standardized processes, along with a monitoring plan to check on adherence to the process by stakeholders. The exception was that if the process was adhered to, the expected outcome would have, the expectation was that if the process was adhered to, the expected outcome would have been achieved. Validity. The team focused on aligning individual goals to the organizational strategy and mandated that development plans were to be done by both managers and team members. This should increase the perceived validity of the process, as employees should play an integral role in the development of their work plans, which should be aligned to their goals. Acceptability and fairness. The new system established that employees will be held accountable for their performance based on the development plan and goals established by both them and their leaders. Inclusiveness. The managers were included from the onset of the organizational change and were tasked with communicating the objectives of the new system to their team members. All employees had the opportunity to be trained on using the new system. Additionally, both leaders and team members should be involved in developing the employees' development plans. Openness. The team encouraged open communication throughout and after the implementation of the performance management system. Beyond the implementation, expectations were set that the new system required continuous communication between employees and their leaders throughout the year, not just during the initial stage of the rollout. Steps were taken to ensure all stakeholders were aligned with the process and to also make changes to the policy or the processes as needed. And finally, standardization. In implementing the new performance management system, Network Solutions instructed organization leaders to stop using all 50 of the performance management approaches they had during their appraisal period. Additionally, the developers would be monitoring the system to ensure compliance. They were also instructed to align their teams to the new system. The HR team also put in place training programs to ensure the managers were equipped to deliver the new approach to their team members. So we've just looked at the ideal characteristics of a performance management system that was evident for network solutions. So looking at the characteristics that were missing, we have correctability and ethicality. Correctability pertains to checks and balances put in place to provide an avenue for employees to dispute a decision they perceive to be inaccurate or unfair. Network Solutions did not put such a lever in place when they developed and implemented their performance management system. The case mentioned that they would monitor the process, but they did not say what would happen in cases of disputes. Ethicality. The case did not explicitly say what was put in place to guarantee that supervisors would be able to objectively assess their employees' performance. And moving over to the ideal characteristics that we believe we need additional information in order for us to evaluate whether or not this was present in the network solution system. We have specificity and context congruence. Now, specificity, of course, distribution system measures the individual's performance against others in the same category. Now, we would want to know how managers would rank employees in the same department who are on the same level, but they're carrying out different types of functions. So if there was a little bit more clarity around how this would be measured, that would have shed a little bit more light on the specificity of their implementation. Also, context congruence. This refers to the performance management system being in sync with the culture of the organization and its immediate environment, such as the country within which the organization operates. While a general overview of the performance management deficiency was stated in the case, the general culture of the organization was not explicitly communicated in the case. So a little bit more context would have been needed for us to evaluate whether or not this new system that is put in place, if the culture that already existed, if it will support that system. While the HR management team did intend to try to make some changes to their culture through communication, it would have been good to know what state we're moving from. What is the culture now and what the future state of the culture, what the expected outcome is. I will now hand over to Suzanne and Antonio, who will take us through the advantages.
All right, thank you, Kasha. So the real reason for a performance management system is to not only transform performance management from an annual event, but an ongoing process. It also seeks to ensure that performance is linked to organizational goals, which will filter down from departments to teams to individuals. And this will lead to some positive outcomes or advantages. According to Agwinis, there are 15 major advantages, but today we'll be looking at 6 for network solution. The first one is this new system will allow for employees to understand their responsibility versus the overall objectives of the organization. What this means is that organizational goals are made clear and team members will fit themselves in. This should be communicated not just at the beginning of the year. For me, every year, January, I am given a set of cues, and then it is expected that throughout the year, I will seek advice from team members, which would include supervisors, HODs, and the persons that I work closely with. And we will figure them out quarterly. So I am due for a quarterly appraisal next week. I'm not sure how that will go this year, but I can't say that I'm looking forward to it. So, and employees should also accept these goals and figure themselves out. So an example of this would be for a recruiter. So say for example, the goal of an organization is to improve sales by 70%. A recruiters, the way a recruiter would fit into this is to, so his QOs would look something like this. When I say QO, I mean quantifiable objective. So a QO for this would be to hire 100 salesperson to meet the 70% increase in sales. The second advantage would be the new system should encourage communications between supervisors and subordinates. What this means, I think it's pretty straightforward, but it means that managers should keep an open line of communication. As I said, I have a quarterly appraisal coming up, and we will discuss where my strong points are, where my low points are, and how we remedy the low points and how we build on those strong points. The judgment of a supervisor should be accurate to ensure accountability. And also, performance management is also a crucial part of a manager's role, and it should not be taken lightly. The third one is that the new system will act as a tool for employee motivation, given that rewards are tied to performance. And this will encourage a culture of high performance, because we wouldn't want an incentive at the end of the year, whether it be a 25% increase or a movement within a salary grade or a trip down by the North Coast. Susan?
Thanks, Antonio. Okay, another advantage of the implementation of the system is talent identification and training. The managers and supervisors at Network Solutions were tasked with the responsibility to retain and train top performing employees in talent management. And by doing so, employees were encouraged to increase input, as this encouraged commitment and investment in the company. Phillips and Golly 2015 emphasized that aspect of talent philosophy by highlighting its preference for developing, retaining, and promoting employees, which is an internal focus. He's therefore affirming that the sole focus of some organizations is developing the entity's talent by way of succession planning and career development, instead of hiring new employees for higher level jobs. In other words, this is saying that employees are encouraged to improve performance when they recognize that interest is placed on them and that they are given top priority for promotion and talent training. So therefore, employees are encouraged when there's an advertisement for a position, a higher level position, and recruitment takes place from within the company. This really provides motivation and encouragement to employees. Another advantage is rewards were tied to performance. And this is also another means of motivation for the employees. They were encouraged to become high achievers, as with this comes incentives and preferential treatment. Anguinis 2013 supported this by explaining that when employees are satisfied with the performance management system, they are most likely to be motivated to perform well and are more committed. So the point is clear and simple. High performance attracts rewards at Network Solutions. Continuing, a standardized performance management system at Network Solutions also made it easier for employees to understand and accept, which is also a plus for employees. And by standardization, I mean making something exactly the same In this context of network solutions, it would mean a set framework that is to be adhered to by all. So basically, by making the system standardized, it will reduce confusion and the misunderstanding that could accompany a system with a variety of standards and levels. As mentioned previously, network solutions went from using over 50 different systems to one standardized system. The performance management system was standardized across all divisions, making it easier for employees to understand and accept. And finally, it differentiated between good and poor performers. Angwini's 2013 also explained that the performance management system allows for a faster identification of good and poor performance, thereby addressing performance problems speedily instead of allowing it to fester and create long-term issues. So basically, this is saying that instead of waiting until the end of the year to tell an employee that, you know, they are not doing well and this is the problem or that is a problem, it would be best if once it is identified, it would be best if it is dealt with right away. And this is what this system, this advantage is speaking about.
So advantages of a performance system would be that a sound performance system will improve organizational performance, or it should, within the different teams, departments, teams, and for individuals. This will also ensure that goals are met, and the new advantage will basically fall into three categories. The first one would be goal setting, where you would set goals, ensure that persons understand where they fit in these goals and how the company is going to go about achieving these goals. The second one would be effective communication. And this is basically allowing a smooth line of communication throughout the organization, from the CEO to the entry-level staff. And the third one would be motivation. This will allow for employees to be both extrinsically and intrinsically motivated and improve morale throughout the organization, because at the end of the day, not everybody will be motivated by the money aspect alone. Some persons appreciate a good job was done on this assignment, or just to have somebody higher up in the organization know your first name and even your last name. And additionally, this will also assist in retaining good employees throughout the organization and keep organizational knowledge in terms of how systems and policies came about, and also pass it along so generations to come within an organization can understand where policies were made from. And now we will look at the disadvantages.
Thank you, Antonio. So for the disadvantages of a poorly implemented performance management system, we know that whatever performance management system that is in place within an organization, it should be efficient and it should also be appropriately implemented. Now, Aguinas 2013 outlined 12 disadvantages that can occur within an organization of implementing a poor performance management system, which I will outline those 12, where we have identified 5 of those 12 being aligned to how the performance management system at Network Solution was implemented. And Paula and myself will be going through those 5 areas. So according to Aguinas, these are the 12 disadvantages that will occur from a poorly implemented performance management system. The first one has to do with increased turnover. And increased turnover has to do with attrition, where you have persons leaving the organization based on the fact that they may not be satisfied based on how the performance management system was implemented. Now, there is use of misleading information. This is where employees may fabricate information about another employee's performance, right? Which is not in line with what the person would, how the person would have performed. And as such, that would impact the system that is being implemented. Lowered self-esteem is another one. And this is where managers may not implement or provide feedback to employees based on their performance at the time that the action was observed or the activity was done, or it was inappropriate or not provided properly. And as such, persons may feel slighted by the way in which a manager communicates this feedback or when it is communicated, and as such, it might have an impact on the organization. Next, we have wasted time and money. In wasting time and money, it is very expensive to implement a performance management system, and it can be very time assuming. And if it is time assuming, it can be a waste of resources depending on the number of stakeholders who are implementing the system. And as such, wasting time and money would go towards like the training that we would have for the different departments who are implementing this system, and the persons who are providing the training, the company would have to have paid for persons to come in and implement the system and provide the training. That again impacts the resources and the bottom line for the organization. There is also damaged relationships. Now, in a team, you will find that the manager could have good relationship with their staff or with their employees, right? And that is the aim. The aim is for everyone to get along really, so that the work can be done effectively and efficiently without emotions involved. What you find is that when you have a poorly implemented performance management system, that relationship can be damaged. And most of the times it is damaged for life. You will find persons who are not willing to work with another person based on how the system was managed or how the communication was managed in implementing that change in system. Now, there is also decreased motivation to perform. With decreased motivation, you will find that, persons who are superior performers, it may not translate in tangible or intangible rewards. And as such, if they don't feel as though they are being rewarded for the work being done, then you'll find that persons do not perform at their optimal. So that's another disadvantage. Moving on, we'll have employee burnout and job dissatisfaction. In employee burnout and job dissatisfaction, there is normally an increased level of dissatisfaction among employees when they feel as if they are overworked. So if the system is not properly implemented and persons feel overworked and burned out, they might become irritated. They might overlook completing tasks that are important or needs to get done right away. And as such, it impacts their productivity at work. Next is then increased risk of litigation. And no company wants to have a lawsuit. So with a poorly implemented system, if an employee feels as though they have performed at a certain level and they were not rewarded for that, or it was not fairly appraised or assessed, then they might want to get external parties like a lawyer involved, which can cost the company a lot of money. So the risk of litigation is very high, and it's very costly to a company should an employee decide to go along that path. Number 9 speaks to unjustified demands on managers and employees' resources. So you will find in such a situation, it may take a while where the system takes up a lot of the managers and the employees' time. where it could be that the resources that we have, that the company has, is not allocated properly in order to manage the work that needs to get done. And as such, with a poorly implemented system, it may be that persons are not appraised fairly because of the impact that the system would have on the resources that are aligned or allocated to complete a particular task. So that with itself is also a disadvantage. The other one would be varying and unfair standards and ratings. Now, for unfair standards and ratings, it can be viewed unfair within a department where, depending on what is assigned or what is aligned, persons are getting different ratings for the work done, right? So if it is that the ratings are not standardized, then you will find that employees will become most dissatisfied, and this would cause the system to fail, the performance management system that was implemented to fail. We then have emerging biases. Now, emerging biases has to do with your personal values and beliefs, your personal bias. And sometimes in a lot of systems or in a lot of companies, you will find that person's personal bias may get involved as it relates to different situations. So for a poorly implemented performance management system, you would find that person's personal bias may replace the standards that the company is trying to implement. And if that happens, you will find that the system will fail because, of course, there would be no way for this system to continue, being that it has been affected by an individual's personal beliefs or values and so forth, as opposed to using the recommended standards and practices. And the final one will be the unclear rating system. With the unclear rating system, this could definitely be due to poor communication. Now, poor communication, as it relates to having the rating system outlined to staff members so that they can understand how it is that they are rated. And if it is that the rating system is not clearly communicated, persons may feel that they had performed at a certain level and they deserve a certain rating that was not awarded to them. If the rating system is clearly defined and clearly outlined, then there will be no questions on anyone's part as to how is it they perform, what grade or rating they should have received based on how they had performed throughout the period. So this would be the 12 general areas that Agwenis mentioned as it relates to some disadvantages of a poorly implemented system. Now we're going to be looking at 5 as it relates to network solution. And if network solution, based on the case, network solution have not taken the correct steps, then these 5 would have been the results would have been resulting in a failure of the system being implemented. So increased turnover, which I mentioned prior, has to do with attrition. Now, what you'll find is that when a system is not properly implemented, persons would, we call it checkout, or persons would stop working. Either physically, they would just resign, where they would no longer be associated with this organization. They would, leave the company and find another job, where they would leave physically or they would leave mentally. Mentally meaning they are still employed in the organization, but of course, they are not completing the task at the standard, at the level in which they normally would. And so you will have a diminishing return because they are not giving you the amount of work that they normally would, or if they do put in the time, you do not get the returns on investment based on the level of work, based on the output that they would have performed throughout the time. So it is as if they are there, but they are really not there, right? So it would be more of them not being an employee really, though they are being paid and they are on the books. You have persons who are like that. So you find persons once they feel as though the company is doing them something wrong or something has gone outside of what they thought would have occurred, then they mentally check out of performing. They no longer perform at that level. Demotivated workers. Now, having demotivated workers, the structure being proposed is to give a greater reward. The structure being proposed by Network Solution is to give a greater reward to higher performance, which may see some workers falling outside of this category, even though they would have been included based on the previous system, the previous 50 systems that were in place. They would have been within the category of receiving a reward or some sort of incentive based on their performance. This may demotivate workers if they no longer fall within that category, especially if you have workers who believe within themselves that they are performing at a certain level, and then this new system is coming to say that upon evaluation, it is relating that they are not reaching the standards that they are required to when they were always top performers. That can demotivate workers. And as such, at Network Solution, they stand a chance of having this issue based on how the system is being implemented. So what you find is that you would have a workforce that really is not completing their task, or they're not really working at their optimal level. They're not efficient and they're not effective, and as such, it's a waste in operations and wasting money for the company overall. Paula is going to continue with the other three areas. Paula?
Thank you, Rashima. All right, so the other three areas. So you have number 3, unhappy and overworked employers. So our employees, implementing a system that staff is not comfortable working with will yield a negative result from staff performance. So you have in Network Solutions, the new system that they intended to implement will see staff feeling uncomfortable because the system would be structured in such a way that there will be persons who normally would have been rewarded even though they were not high performers, and now they are now being placed in a position that they are going to be placed at a lower level. So this will find that the persons will feel uncomfortable and unhappy, right? So, and at the same time, there are going to be persons who are going to be working extremely hard because they want to be in that level, the highest level, to be rewarded. And so they are going to be overworked trying to meet the standard. Then number 4 speaks to increased legal issues. As mentioned earlier by Rashima, the fact of the matter is no company wants to experience legal issues. So the exposure to legal litigation based on the new system can could possibly put the Network Solution in a sticky position where they could see persons taking legal action against them because, for one, the staff may think that the system is not, the rating system established is not fair, or there may be the additional need for training for the system and for staff to be properly educated. And so persons will feel as if the system is against them. And so this may not, of note, this may not happen in Jamaica, but we internationally, the legal parameters are are at such a standard that persons will take action against their companies. And so it is possible that Network Solution could experience litigation issues increasing as staff feel, 1, that they are being robbed, or 2, the system was already designed to put them in a lower position. And as Shrim already indicated to us, in 2013, it is important to be knowledgeable about professional legal guidelines, including relevant case law in any given country, pertinent to the design and implementation of performance management systems, as following these guidelines will enhance the defensibility of a system in the face of legal challenge. And this is something that you find Network Solution would need to do. And finally, we would say that the assessment would some persons would deem it unjust and that it lacks standards. And again, this could link to the fact that they do not understand the system, because the new system will see staff being categorized. And this could have managers and supervisors being uncomfortable as assessment would not be standardized. And what we found is that there were persons, managers, who did not want to do assessment of staff. They thought that assessing staff would put them against the staff. And so staff, they had to treat staff as if they were on the same level or befriend them in doing the assessment. One manager at a conference even indicated that if they were to be true in doing their assessment, it may hurt the other person that they are assessing, and so the assessment is not fairly done. So you will find situations of assessment being unjust and lacking standards because individuals now start applying their own understanding when proper training is not done. So these are the 5 disadvantages that we thought to apply to Network Solutions Inc. Of note, there were others that we could apply, but for the preservation of time, we use these 5. So I'll ask Marco and Suzanne to take over.
Thanks, Paula. Okay, based on the details provided in the case, we emphasized earlier that it is important that the performance management system and Network Solutions be aligned with the organization's goals and objectives to achieve the desired outcome. But in order to do this, the system must bear the main characteristics of the ideal performance management system as outlined by Agonis 2013. So based on this, here are a few recommendations that I will put forward. One first recommendation is that Network Solutions should have implemented a quarterly evaluation system that would have been more impactful than an annual performance system. It is also recommended that the company use a suitable method to the culture and strategic objectives of the company rather than a forced distribution method. As mentioned earlier, this method is selective and does not capture all employees. Agonis 2013 used Yahoo as an example of one organization that used this method once, but later switched due to the fact that it compared one employee against another. It basically weeds out low performers and other features. Agonis 2013 states that a good system is standardized, meaning performance is evaluated consistently across the board on one level. What all of this is saying is that quarterly evaluations allow for any issues with employees' performance to be addressed. In addition to this, a standardized system will also eliminate biases and employee conflicts. Secondly, it is recommended that a system of inclusiveness be implemented at Network Solutions. The book Agonis 2013 also explained that a good system should include the input of all participants, and it must represent the concerns of all who will be affected. So a full-scale involvement in all areas of the system, for example, its creation and the measurement of behaviors and results, is essential. It is essential because of the diversity of today's organization and the varying cultural background and views on how a performance management system should be done. As stated in this case, the responsibility was with the HR team, managers, and senior leaders to design and implement the new system. No mention was made of the input of employees during the process until it was finalized. Another recommendation would be a system that provides support for low performers. Based on the facts presented, even though low achievers are given time to improve, when they don't, they are dismissed without any form of incentive. Again, according to Agonis 2013, the performance management system should provide information that will identify and distinguish between effective and ineffective results. The aim really should be to address low performance through continuous communication between employee and supervisor before it gets to the critical stage of dismissal. It's the critical stage where the employee leaves or is dismissed empty-handed after investing years in the company. While it is good to support high achievers, there is need for substantial support for low achievers. And finally, network solutions should ensure that there is a proper construction of effective communication where employees are concerned. And this is to avoid a lack of information and to ensure that the process is fully understood and accepted by all. In other words, managers are to provide a platform where employees are comfortable to express themselves and also get information on the system so they are confident that they understand the process without any feeling of fear or intimidation. In addition, the aim is also to provide continuous routine orientation for new employees entering the organization, just to ensure everyone is on track. Angonis 2013 supports this by stating that a good system should have no secrets, evaluations should be frequent, and employees are continuously informed of their performance quality. We have to understand that communication about employees' evaluation is a two-way process, where employees get a chance to be engaged in the exchange of the information. He also states that standards should be clear and communicated on an ongoing basis, and that it's factual, open, and honest. And now we'll move over to Marco.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I will now reiterate all that we have said today in a summary. Now, network solutions recognize that performance problems were not being addressed within their organization, and increased pressure from competitors resulted in the cost of managing human performance ineffectively becoming more problematic. In order to improve this, Network Solutions hired a global cross-divisional team to implement a new system. The new system was designed using the following processes: goal cascading and team building, performance planning, development planning, ongoing discussions and updates between managers and employees, and an annual performance summary. These processes allow the newly implemented system at Network Solutions and the ideal system to share a few characteristics. Some of these characteristics are strategic congruence, which is the alignment of goals of the individual and goals of the organization, and the identification of ineffective and effective performance, which could be done through the rating system and address where employees fell within the rating system. It is highly difficult to implement the perfect system, and as such, Network Solutions had a few shortcomings. These can be identified as correctability and ethicality. Enough information was not presented in the case to determine if specificity and context congruence were implemented in the performance management system. There were some advantages of the system identified from the case. These advantages allow goal setting, effective communication, and motivation to take place within the organization. With this said, some disadvantage could also be readily identified if the system was not implemented properly. These are increased turnover, demotivated workers, overworked employees, and increased legal issues. Some recommendations were put forward by the team to remedy these disadvantages: a quarterly evaluation system, a method of evaluation that is more suited to the culture of the organization, inclusivity, and support for low performance employees. If Network Solutions implements and maintains this system and also adheres to the recommendations made by the team today, there is no doubt that they will be able to manage employees effectively and gain a competitive advantage. We thank you all for listening today, and we look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Okay. Question and answer period is open. Well, first of all, give them a clap for their presentation. Give them a clap. And the question and answer session is now open. What are your questions of the group? Remember, as I explained at the beginning, if I don't get questions, then I'm just going to be calling on persons to pose questions or comments, etc. So let's hope I don't have to do that.
Miss, I have a question for the group. This is Chantal Hardy, by the way.
Okay, Chantal.
I think it would be either for Paula or Rashima. They would have spoken about litigations, but I was wondering if they would consider if having a grievance system for network solution will also be a good thing before having, because it was mentioned that, you know, once the employee feels as if they weren't properly appraised, then they may get an attorney. But before it escalates to that level, would they say that it's something that they would try to handle using a grievance system in-house before having it reach to that level? So that's something for the group to, well, Paula or Rashima rather, to answer.
Thank you, Chantal, for the question. It is actually a good recommendation, though it was not stated in the case that they had a grievance system in place. And based on the fact that but we are just working from what the facts of the case outlined. And if it is that they do have a grievance system in place, that is one way where they could have gone to litigation, where they could have, mediation, where they could have outlined what it is that they were not pleased with, and the manager could present evidence as it relates to why is it a particular score was provided. However, this too can have a breakdown, and if there is such a breakdown, the possibility of having litigation would still be present, and it will be based on how the data is presented or the evidence of a person's performance that they may not be pleased with, and the manager may not want to, negotiate or compromise then from their position, which could cause like a, deadlock.
Thank you, Rashima. Thank you.
Okay. From a legal standpoint, yes, you're correct in saying that enough wasn't given as to what correcting practices or policies or stuff would be put in. There are more legal issues, but I'll wait until my area to deal with that. Okay, next question. Guys, don't let me have to call on you, please.
Yes, miss.
Hello.
Yes, who's asking a question?
Okay, Miss Anake.
Yes, Anake.
I'm posing the question to the group, but I don't remember exactly who did this part. Forgive me, team. I'm sorry, but I just wanted a little bit more clarity. If you could just expound a little bit more for me. One of the recommendations that you had posed was that you'd have construction of effective communication implemented. You said that you recommend your recommendation. One of your recommendations would be to provide routine orientation for the new employees. I'm pretty curious. Just tell me a little bit more about that.
All right. Basically, I was trying to explain that for persons entering, the other group members may add to this after, but for persons entering the organization, it would be important to have to orient those new employees so that they're made aware of the system, everything about the system and how it operates, and the different means or measures, the different ways that they may be able to communicate to their managers, supervisors, So making them aware of the type of system that exists at Network Solutions. That is one of the reasons for orientation and communication of new employees.
As
I
well
don't know if
as,
any other group member would like to add to that.
yes, I'd like to add to that. I was actually trying to pull up the case here. Anna, that's a very good question. At the end of the case, it's actually saying that one of the things that they would want to do is to ensure that they have a culture around what they are trying to achieve. So with having a culture, what they then do is to ensure that everyone who comes in follows that culture, as opposed to, you know, going out and doing what they see the older people do. As you know, they used to use 50 different, and not everybody at that time is going to all of a sudden want to or be fully accepting of the new one that they have. So that's my addition to what Susan just said.
Okay, yes, that's something that probably wasn't picked up thoroughly in the recommendation, because it did say that they are making plans to reinforce the needed culture change to support the new system. So they wanted to continue to educate the employees. So it would be assumed that new employees would fall into that process automatically, because they're saying they're putting in systems to educate the employees to ensure that they understand how the system works and how they're measured and what happens with good performance. So that was something that could have been explained in the recommendations in terms of the fact that the company, you know, is going to put systems in place to educate the employees as to how the new system works, etc. Okay, it's a good question. Any other questions?
Thank you, Miss.
Come on, guys, wake up.
Philip has his hand up, Miss.
Yeah, remember I can't see the hands, you know, because I am not the host.
Yes, Philip's hands are raised. Philip, you want to go ahead?
Before Philip asks his question, Aurel, don't forget your question, because I believe Aurel had indicated also. Go ahead, Philip.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And thanks very much for that enlightening presentation, Group 1, and commendations to everyone in the team, particularly those who are experiencing health challenges, but still, you know, turned up today to share your information with us. So thank you very much for that information. It really helped to augment and cement all the wonderful concepts that Miss has been sharing with us since the beginning of the semester. Now, I have two questions to ask, and I think this was related to the section that Paula and Rashima presented. And Rashima in particular mentioned that as it relates to motivating top performing employees, that providing rewards and incentives will help to enhance their performance or maintain the level of performance as top employees. Based on your readings and personal experience from your job, are the motivation limited to only rewards and incentives, or are there other kinds of actions that a company could take, a manager or a team supervisor, to actually maintain performance and keep their top performers engaged? That is question for Rashima. For Paula, if I may, you mentioned that most legal issues are linked to unfair or unhappy, unfair rating on unhappy employees. Could there be other reasons for unhappy employment, such as, you know, culture, communication, or legal issues arising from interpersonal relations?
Philip, let her deal with the questions one at a time, because it will be hard to go back and, you know, sort of remember exactly what your question is. So let her take the first question.
One is for Rashima and the second is for Paula.
Okay, so let them take the first question.
Sure.
Repeat the question again, Philip.
Okay, the first question. Oh, it's okay, Miss. I understood it.
Yeah, but for the class purposes, because that was said. Just
No
repeat
problem.
the question.
So the first question was linked to the section that Rashima spoke on as it relates to motivating top performers within the organization. And she mentioned that the way to ensure that they remain motivated and perform at the required level is through rewards and incentives. I was asking if there are other ways to keep employees motivated so they perform, and are there any examples from your own personal organizational place of work?
Okay, thank you for that question, Philip. So a part of what was said earlier was that the rewards can be both tangible and intangible. So tangible would be the physical reward and the incentives that the persons could get, as well as intangible then could be, the personal recognition, not necessarily giving someone physical stuff like money or so forth, but you could send out an email to recognize the person for their efforts. There can be certificates or award ceremonies that are held at the end of a quarter that would highlight persons' efforts and persons' performance. There can be a number of different ways that persons can be recognized. Good job after completing a task is a way of recognition, providing the feedback. And so it's not just giving someone something physically, but more so just acknowledging that this person did something that requires, that was above or outside of their what would I say, outside of their maybe job description or what is required of them on a daily basis. They have gone above and beyond. And so as a manager, you would recognize it. It can come in the form of delegation as well, where a manager try to upskill someone based on the level of work that they see this person is performing, or the leadership qualities that are presented by this person. It could be in that form where it is more of delegation, or it could be where we provide additional training so that persons can get increased skills to be promoted in another area. So it varies, really. You ask about experiences from my job. I'm gonna say in my professional life, I've had 2 jobs. So from my first job, I would say yes, I can see where persons are rewarded without getting something physical, like an incentive or additional pay or anything like that. There were always, like at the end of a quarter, there is always a MVP award ceremony where persons were recognized for their hard work in different categories. On a monthly basis, you would have, for example, in the BPO sector, where you have the advocate agents or call center agents performing, they have rewards and recognition segment where persons are given certificates, trophies, so that sort of stuff. They have email blasts that they will send out to show the level of service provided by someone. That in itself is also a way of motivation. So it varies. And so Network Solution, as I was saying earlier, could have implemented methods to motivate the motivated staff. Sorry.
Can I jump in here to Rashima?
Yes, go ahead, Chantal.
Yes, so as it relates to experiences from our jobs ourselves, we have something weekly, team huddles, where we have a section where you have pop colors, and I heard Rashima just mentioned the segment where you big up people. So it's basically once you did something great in the week, or even if somebody did something, no matter how small it is, you big them up. And we realize that every week it just gets more and more and more and more. So everybody is trying to, as best as possible, to ensure that they work as hard as they can. And the second thing that I realized, and just this week, I figured it out, that some of our consultants and the leads, they actually go out into conferences. One of the things that I realized that they really, really liked is when the team comes out and supports them. So support is one of the intangible ways that we can support our team members. or reward them.
Okay.
One quick comment on before you go on to the second question, Philip. You can assume based on some information in the case that some motivation is taking place, you know, in terms of non-financial motivation, because one of the things it says is that the managers have been told or they're responsible for having meetings with the employees and guiding the employees on how to prepare for meetings and, you know, working with them through their developmental plans. So one can assume that in those meetings, you know, there are motivational aspects also to those meetings. But yes, the things that have been mentioned by both Rashima and Chantal are actual experiences that do take place within companies. There are a lot of other non-financial, you know, types of rewards that can be put in place in terms of keeping employees motivated. Go on to your second question.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rashima and Chantal Artwell. That really helped as it relates to reinforcing ways we can actually motivate performance and tie it into ensuring that the performance management process meets the goal. Now, the second question was for Paula, who mentioned that based on rating error or perceived unfair rating from the rater, legal issues can arise, and Jamaica is not so much a litigious society, so that might be minimal. However, what I'd like to know if effective feedback, timely feedback, and performance management training, such as rater error training and other types of training, would help to mitigate against that. And also, do legal issues only arise from perceived unfair ratings?
Okay, thank you. And as you love to call people last name, Mr. Philip, I'll do it and make it sound pretty. Philip Earl. Thank you, Philip. So, so in answering your question, okay, indeed, the education is very important to reduce the chances of litigation. But I'm going to focus more on the last part of your question, as you wanted to understand whether or not there were other reasons that the organization may experience legal issues from staff. And yes, there are other areas, there are other ways. The truth of the matter is we narrowed it down into on the PMS part of it because of what we're presenting on. But even in our text, we have an obvious example placed in our text where a female.
Oh no, we had a break. We had a break in transmission there. Hold on a minute. Hold on. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you, Miss.
Yes, Miss, we're hearing
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
Miss,
yes,
we're hearing you.
Okay, my system went, so I didn't hear any of that.
Okay. Oh. So
can you hear me now?
Yes, Miss.
Yes, Miss, we're hearing you.
Okay. Can you just back up a little because I couldn't hear any of that.
Okay, Miss, I'll take it from the top, except the Philip Earl part. All right, so what I was saying is that the truth of the matter is, yes, an organization can experience litigation for different reasons. We had emphasized on the aspect of the performance management system based on what is happening with network solutions. However, yes, there are various reasons that someone can take action. And as I was referring to the example that is posed in the text, where a female in a construction industry having gotten promotion, she was then, persons were, some behavioral has changed towards her on the job. And so she took action against the company and she actually won the case and she got what, $1.2 million. And that was basically a case against sex discrimination. So that is one example that was posed in the text. And I believe in other lectures, we have had that discussion about how sex discrimination can occur in the workplace, and indeed legal action can be taken. Persons can have reasons to take action against the company also if it is that for whatever reason they believe that the company was unjust towards them or did not handle something that they think could have be handled differently. So yes, apart from just their perceived idea about the PMS, they can take action otherwise.
I'd like to jump in once again. There is some in the case, right, Philip? It was also talking about the fact that for the low performing people, they would be put on, so after they've been given a chance to improve, if they don't improve, then they're being put on a performance improvement plan. And then what would then happen if they don't improve? Termination. So if it's a case that, and I feel like it's also something very close to performance overall, but termination is something that can lead to legal implication. Well, legal battles with the company, because then it will then go back to performance. They would say that they were terminated unfairly, or everything else that would surround termination.
Okay, there's some other legal implications that could happen that I don't think you really sort of picked up, but the system is now separating the employees by performance, and fine. But the way it is separating them is almost creating favoritism, because you remember where it says that 1%, what happens to that? What the people who get a 1, the persons who get a who get a 1. What does it say here? It says
they got salary incentives.
Right.
And stock options.
And even those that got a 2 would get stock options and that sort of stuff. So what is happening there is that it is also creating favoritism. It is encouraging favoritism, because those that are viewed as being key employees will be given new roles and new duties and that sort of thing. So it is promoting a certain amount of dissent and distrust among the team members. Okay, so again, that affects morale, it affects satisfaction, and it can create legal issues. The other thing that can create some legal issues is that what they're doing by using a forced distribution system is also creating competition. So they have also forced competition among the employees. Okay, and therefore you're going to find that the employee relationships also can be damaged. The relationship with the managers can be damaged, because there's a lot of rivalry. A lot of rivalry has been created. Okay, so it could create some legal issues too, because it can affect the overall performance of the team. Okay, so in terms of dysfunctional behavior, it sometimes forced distribution systems encourage dysfunctional behavior. So there are bases for additional legal things that can occur.
Miss, can we also say then that there would be a wage gap as for as it relates to some, as you said a while ago, some people getting more pay than others, wherein you'd also see gender issues coming out as it relates to compensation, as they'd probably say because of biases towards women, or because of biases towards men, we see where women are paid more than men, or men are paid more than women.
I don't think that would be necessarily so, because remember, they have declared what the system is and what you will get. Remember, when we speak about deciding on forms of measurement and the approach to rankings, they have declared what the system is and what you will get. What are the incentives you will get if your performance is rated good or unsatisfactory or excellent, whatever. So I'm not sure that this is a case of gender issues, because the system is declared in terms of whether you're a man or a woman. Goals are to be set for you, and this is the ranking system. This is the ranking system. If you get a 1, what you're going to get. If you get a 2, what you're going to get. If you get a 3, what you're going to get. So I don't think overall the system is unfair. And I don't think that it is necessarily, from what we can see in the case, promoting gender issues, because it has a published approach.
No, Miss,
There's a
I'm wondering if we see, like, for example, this is something that I'm wondering if it's something that can probably come up. For example, we see we're using the class as an example. With standing, well, going forward with saying that we have half the class are women and half the class are men, and then we realize that most of the women are in the one, and then 2-1, and people are going to be saying that, oh, maybe the system is more biased to women than men.
No, but that is no, Chantal, that's a whole different issue. That goes back to rata errors as to whether the company now is not putting the necessary training in place, so that objectives that are set, goals that are set are objective, not subjective, and that performance assessment is being carried out in an objective manner. That's a whole different issue, you know, and that would lead back to looking at particular departments and leaderships as to whether, yes, there is a certain amount of favoritism again, based on how that leader is carrying out their ratings. But the system as it is set up is a fair system, and it is fully declared and published as to what it is, etc. Where they would have to look at is to ensure that the goal setting process is one that is being properly done, and that the assessments are being properly done based on staying clear of biases. Okay. So again, the whole matter of training, which they indicated in the case that training has to be done. What we don't know is, of course, what are the forms of training. Okay.
So, Miss, based on what you said, as it relates to the internal competition,
who is asking? Who's asking?
This is Rashima.
Okay. Go ahead.
So based on what you said in relation to the internal competition, for the different job positions and so forth, I'm thinking about status and so, right? And going back to the favoritism based on the rating system, do you believe that employees may be a little bit stressed out and feel under pressure to perform at a certain level, which may negatively impact them, well, physically and mentally?
Well, this is what I said, that because of how they are creating both internal competition and showing favoritism, it could result in the teams, in the employees not performing. It could relate to dysfunction and underperformance and stuff like that, because where you have, like, you know, employees who can't get along with each other because they feel that the manager is favoring that one, and you know that one has been elevated because their performance was good and that sort of stuff. So you could have some dysfunctional behaviors, yes, and of course it would lead to a lack of motivation.
Okay, thank you, Miss.
Okay,
Miss, I have well, it's a question and a concern. This is Cashel.
But you had Horal, don't you had Horail waiting to ask a question first?
Oh, I don't. Horail?
Co-host, you need to manage this, you know. Remember, I can't manage it from where I am. You are the co-host. You are seeing who's asking the questions. And you said that Horail was waiting as well.
He did have his hand up. He took it down. I don't know if he has changed his mind.
Ask him.
I did say that earlier. Oriel?
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Hi, Oriel.
All right.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question.
Yes.
Well, two, but one of them was already answered. Okay. The other is turnover. One of the members there indicated that turnover can be resulted from an inefficient system or something like that. However, she spoke about the person leaving the company physically or mentally. Now, I didn't quite get an understanding of a person being in the organization and mentally not there being a turnover. So what I want to ask is an explanation for that aspect of it in terms of mental turnover?
There's no such thing as mental turnover, but let them answer. Go ahead, answer. I shouldn't have said that. Go ahead.
So it's not necessarily a mental turnover. It will lead to turnover. So if the person is not there physically, means that they would have immediately resigned. So should there be someone that disagrees with the system, then they would immediately resign. They wouldn't want to be a part of that organization. Whilst other persons might be there and based on their circumstances, they disagree and they don't immediately resign because based on their situation, they might not have another job going into, or they might necessarily need to remain employed and maybe actively seeking employment. If that happens, they have checked out mentally from this organization and may not perform at their optimal. While they're there, they're not performing at the level that they normally would. So they would have mentally checked out, which will lead to a turnover because they will eventually resign. Sorry, Oriel, is that clear for you? Have I answered the question?
Oh yes, I get that they mentally leave in the organization may lead to turnover. So I get that aspect that it's not necessarily turnover, but something that can contribute to someone leaving the organization.
Right, people become unproductive when they psychologically, you know, almost what we say, take a leave of absence psychologically. It means that all of a sudden their performance becomes, you know, unproductive, poor performance. They no longer have an interest. They're no longer motivated, that sort of stuff. So you can have both voluntary and involuntary separation in this case, because the employee might say, okay, they look for another job and they leave, but in some cases they don't leave and they're there as baggage and their performance is poor. So you end up separating them. So you have, in the case where that happens, it can lead to both voluntary and involuntary separation. Okay. Okay, who was the person that was asking when I interrupted about Haral?
Cashel.
Cashel, go ahead, Cashel.
For this case, do you think that there should have been some significant consideration given to job analysis? I've been in organizations before where they did a performance management system overhaul and they set new goals for employees without checking if the job description that the employees had in the first place would have been aligned to the goals that they're setting for them. So I was just concerned in going through this case, I didn't see where it was explicitly stated that the HR team would have gone through to ensure that the existing job descriptions would have been up to date and aligned with the goals of the organization's strategy. So I'm not sure if I missed it, so I wanted to know if that's something that we should have considered.
Well, yes, it's something that could be considered. Yes, you're right. I mean, well, I'm sorry. There to answer. I am answering. Go ahead, please.
No,
answer.
I'm a member of the team.
Oh, you're a member of the team. Sorry.
So that was a concern.
In some organizations, it's important to make sure that the job descriptions are up to date when you are implementing a performance system, whether you're doing a revised system or not. One of the things is that, yes, because basically goals that are set and objectives for employees should be in keeping with the job description, but not just the job descriptions, the strategic plan. Okay, but where a manager may see that there's a discrepancy or a major discrepancy, you know, between what an employee is doing and what is on the job description, it should be brought to the attention of HR. And in some cases, it's not a fully blown job analysis that would be done. It's more in some cases because it might be an odd case or a couple odd cases, they would do a position evaluation. But if there is a major discrepancy between, for instance, what the strategic plan for the organization says and that there cannot be any link between the strategic plan and the employee's job description, then yes, they're going to have to go through and do a whole job analysis. If it's that big, you know, because some of those job descriptions may have been many years old. Duties have been added, you know, to employees' responsibilities without any consideration as to whether there is equality as well in terms of the job holder's responsibilities versus another job holder's responsibilities, etc. Or it may be so fragmented that it's impossible to carry out the various goals. So if job descriptions have not been revisited for a long time, they should be revisited. And in some cases, it might require a fully blown job analysis, because if grading and those, you know, like in the public sector where your jobs actually carry grades. In private sector, you don't find as many of the jobs carrying grades, you know, they will maybe carry what is called a level, but not necessarily grades. So depending on what the environment is, yes, in a full-scale re-implementation like this, maybe they should have looked at it. I was just looking at it to see whether there was any indications, you know, as to whether they felt that there was a need for that, but I don't see any indications. I mean, they indicated that there was problems with people meeting meeting the organizational goals, you know, and they felt that performance was not linked to the goals, but no real mention. But yes, as a recommendation, it could have been a recommendation to ensure that the system is very relevant and valid too, and that it would meet the intended goals. It might have been a good idea to look and ensure that job descriptions are, you know, are valid. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms.
Any other questions? We still have time in this question period. So we have at least 15 minutes in this question period.
Hi, good evening. This is Damian.
Yes, Damian, hi.
All right, so I have a pretty long question, but so it would have mentioned.
Just make sure they can understand it then, since you put in that disclaimer there that it's a pretty long question.
I'm gonna go slowly, hopefully it will be clear. All right, so given that the company would have had a system in place where they would have been going through 50 formal performance management measures, and have now implemented this new system in the organization, the standardized system, that for one rates its employees on levels 1, 2, or 3. And for those persons who may be rated in level 3, it would have indicated that they are given a specific time frame in which to improve their performance. If not, they may either lose certain benefits, and if the performance continues to fall or does not improve, they may be terminated from the company. I wanted to know, based on the culture that would have existed before, and what they're trying to implement now, for those persons who may fall within the rating 3 group, what consideration could be given for those persons to possibly retrain and realign their duties within the company in this new way forward, as opposed to quote unquote pressuring them, which could possibly, as was mentioned before, be a sign of demotivation or be seen as competition, which may increase pressure and mental anxiety. So, and a lot of persons don't factor well under those conditions. So I want to know if there are other considerations that could have been made in the ideal system where those persons, depending on an overview of their skill set in general, if their positions or their responsibilities could have been realigned within the company as opposed to just being terminated.
Okay.
One recommendation. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Damon, I'm going to try to answer that question. So them being fired would have happened at the end of the year, at the end of the assessment system. But there were continuous checks being done monthly throughout the entire year. And as such, there was also communication between the employees and the managers. And so a consideration could be expressing within that meeting the difficulties, and they would also be able to see, based on the assessment, where the employees fall short and the adjustments could have been made. So before we reach to them losing the benefits and being fired, there is monthly checks to see how they are doing within the new system. So it's a continuous process of analyzing how they are getting along, and if they are falling behind, how can we adjust and how can we realign to ensure that they achieve what we set out for them. Not sure if Susan has to add.
Okay. Yes, I was gonna mention part of that there could be consistent communication between supervisors and employees. So, and a platform be provided for them to hear any issues that they may be having. And also, I think it was mentioned that a quarterly evaluation system be done. So that would be able to capture any shortcomings or any with poor performance, whatever is happening with the employee, it would have been captured and before the end of the year, where it would have ended, resulted in a dismissal or termination from the company. Training could have been provided also. So when these issues are identified, training could have been provided to them. So instead of giving them one chance, and then if they fail, then they are dismissed. They could have been given, instead of getting that chance to start over, training could have been provided in that instance instead, to allow them to bring them up to a higher level of performance.
Okay, I think there's something that may have missed a little bit in the case, in that part of and it clearly states it, that a part of the process includes development planning. And the case clearly states that the employees work with the managers to finalize their development plans. So I would not say that they're not being given a chance to improve and that they're just let go like that, because developmental planning, it states, is a big part of the and those developmental planning meetings are a big part of the process. And then it goes on to say that even after they're given that rating, okay, they are still given a chance, because they're not terminated unless on a second period.
Yeah.
That they're then terminated without any severance package and that sort of stuff. So I think that they are given a fair chance, because developmental planning, and it says meetings have to be held, etc. And if you look at the whole matter of performance execution, okay, remember that grid that we have that shows performance planning, performance execution, and all of that. The whole matter of performance execution is a big factor in this case, and it involves the whole matter of having a development plan and the employee participating in the construction of that development plan. So I wanted to draw back your attention to that, Damian, because it does exist there, and would say to me that they're not just let go like that, because they have developmental planning, they have meetings throughout the year, you know, similar to what Horail is suggesting. And then they still have a period to go back and improve, because it clearly says that if the performance does not improve after the second period, okay, they're then terminated without a severance package. So they also know at the beginning what the expectations are. And that goes back to when there was mention of specificity. Okay, specificity actually involves employees knowing exactly how the system works. And that was something I'd be, pointing out later on, but since it has come up now, I'll point it out. The explanation of specificity needed to also include the fact that it means that the system can be well understood by all, that the expectations of the system are well understood. So I wouldn't agree with the fact that they're just put through the door like that based on even the little that is said in the case. It seems to me as if these people are given a chance, they're given a developmental plan, they have meetings, they're given guidance, etc.
Yes, miss. Yes,
So
and that was, yes, Marco was mentioning it earlier.
That is my take on it.
The PIP.
I think Karen had her hand up.
Karen, are you here? I think because she's not on my screen anymore. I'm not seeing her again. She may be dropped.
No, she's on. I don't know. She probably stepped away.
Or she has muted her system.
Right, but she did have her hand up earlier.
Okay, anybody else? Nikisha has a hand up. All of a sudden I saw that on the screen.
Good evening, everyone. Hi. My question is for Rashima. You mentioned that a poorly implemented system can damage relationship between managers and employees. Could you explain that for me further, please?
Sure, thank you. If feedback is not provided to the employee within the correct time frame, and say a manager observe an employee completing a task and it was not completed to the best of their ability, or how it was supposed to have been completed in January, and the performance feedback is the review period is at the end of, let's say, June. Say it's a 6-month review. Nothing was said to the person at that time. However, at the time of the review, it is mentioned that the activity was not done. No feedback was provided or guidance to the person for them to know that it was not done properly. This can damage relationships, because then the trust that existed between the employer and the employee there could have been damaged. And, normally in a relationship with a team, managers and employees normally have a good relationship. Well, should have a good relationship, build on trust and respect and so forth. And so the employee who was not provided with feedback in time might feel as though this was deliberate, or it could have been vindictive, and harbor. It will impact their emotions, and when we get emotional, we tend to behave a certain way, and so it might cause a strain on the relationship.
I'll add to that to Rashima. Just thinking about it, the note didn't say it specifically, but managers who would not have wanted to do a proper appraisal of their staff will be forced to do that now. And so persons who were quote unquote friendly and chummy will find that the relationship is now going to be damaged or challenged, because they are now forced to do a proper evaluation of the performance of the worker.
Yeah, but where the relationship gets damaged is more who explained it first? Who was explaining it here first?
That was Rashima.
Rashima. Where it gets damaged is more likely based on what Rashima explained, because what happens is that an employee who feels that their supervisor or manager is unfair and that their boss is, etc., will lose faith and trust in that manager. And once that faith and trust is lost, it is very difficult to restore it. So it's not a matter that the manager and the employee might have been chummy before, and therefore, because they're having to do the proper appraisal now, you know, the relationship is damaged. Yes, that can occur, but most times the relationship is damaged because one, sometimes feedback is not given, okay, and given on a timely basis, like Rashima said, or not given at all. And then all of a sudden the manager springs this appraisal and this rating on an employee who didn't know that he or she was not performing well. So there becomes a big disagreement in terms of what the employee understood versus now what a manager may be saying. And this is why it is so important from the goal setting stage that the employee understands fully what the expectations are. And that is where when you spoke about inclusiveness, that comes in. When you spoke about specificity, that comes in. Very, very important from the goal setting process that it is quite clear as to what the expectations are, and that the manager does what he or she is supposed to do. Manager or supervisor does what he or she is supposed to do throughout the year. It is not a one-time process. So when that happens, yes, the whole relationship is broken down. And if a series of those happens in the department, word travels fast, right? Word would have traveled fast within the company. And you find that there are other employees who take up the cause as well. And the whole department morale is affected. Motivation is affected, morale is affected, and yes, the relationship between the manager and the employees are no longer a positive one. Okay. Any other questions? Two more questions before we come out of this section. What happened to the rest of the class? Don't tell me you're going to really let me have to end up by calling on somebody. Hmm?
Karen, you're still not back?
Okay. Well, let me go find two persons then. Let me see who is in the class. Let me look at the list here and find two persons who have not heard anything from in ages. Let me take a look here. Let me take a look. I'm coming. Is Belinda here? Is Belinda here?
Yes, I am.
Belinda, what do you have to say?
I thought it was a good presentation, and the questions, in terms of the questions, the answers were, the responses were good, and you clarified as well.
So you don't have any questions then?
I had a question in relation to the strategic goal setting, but that question was answered.
Okay. Errol, are you here? I've not heard a word out of you.
Good evening, Miss.
Yes, Errol.
All right, so I have a question. One of the presenters mentioned that supervisors are, well, first of all, let me say it was a good presentation. It's clear that the team did their research. One of the presenters mentioned that supervisors are responsible for training the employees. But I was wondering if there's any other type of intervention other than a formal training that the supervisors could use to develop as part of the development plan for the employee.
Answer group.
Okay, I had mentioned that supervisors were responsible for training top performers. So there was an opportunity for training in talent management for top performers. What's the other part of the question?
I'm just asking if, so you identify training, which I agree with, but is there any other type of intervention that the supervisor could use to help to develop that employee further?
Definitely. Provide a platform for that, for those employees to be able to be confident or trustworthy, for them to feel that they can trust the supervisors. So whatever the situation, whatever it is that they are going through that's causing them not to perform at the level that they're supposed to perform, then the supervisors could provide that environment for those employees to be able to come to them, speak with them. Apart from other, maybe that person may need counseling. You know, maybe they may need to be referred to, you know, an organization for further counseling or training or something. You know, maybe they need extended training. So once they're able to share and communicate what the issues are, then the supervisor should be able to provide that.
I'd also like to add that what they can also do is maybe change the person who they report to. And this is something that I can say from experience. I've watched a person who was underperforming move to another team and basically started getting pop colors every week because of how well they were doing. So it's basically the kind of environment that she was in, as well as the person who she was being led by. So that's the one. As well as they can even put her as a protege, put him or her as a protege with somebody else who is the expectations that they have.
Okay. So you're talking about like job rotation and mentorship and coaching and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
there are two more hands.
Okay, because people don't want me call them. Okay,
no,
fine.
Stacy, and here I was just wondering when Susan was answering the question if job shadowing could be one, but Chantal actually suggested that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And who was the other hand? Who's the other hand?
Nicola had her hand up, but I was about to ask a question about coaching being one of the intervention for the low performers. Yes. But again,
yes.
Chantal, it was just
okay.
answered.
Okay, well, let me pick up
performance team.
Let me pick up two others. Felicia, where is Felicia? Felicia, I know you're here. Pardon me?
Philip, hello?
I'm not hearing you. Go ahead.
Philip already asked the question that I was going to ask in terms of performance management and rewards, in terms of intangible and tangible rewards, in terms of is it only tangible rewards that are used to motivate employees, with the section that Rashima did. Because I read an article.
Sorry, we're hardly hearing you. We're hardly hearing you. Sorry. I think your phone is
Yep, I figured. I was saying that Philip already answered the question that I was going to ask in terms of intangible and tangible rewards, because I was actually reading an article today in terms of aligning rewards with performance management in terms of pay per performance. And in the article, it stated that persons were rewarded financially for the work that they did based on achieving goals that were set by the company. However, the article also made mention of the fact that not all persons are motivated by money. So it's important that persons are rewarded separately and apart from money in terms of intangible rewards, such as what Rashima mentioned before in her answer, which talked about Employee of the Month, recognition for employees. So my question was already answered.
Okay, is Jody Ann here?
Sorry, Miss, before you go on, Hurry, I put up his hand again.
Okay.
Yes. What I wanted to know, you said that the performance system that is now being implemented is a new one. I was wondering if it would also be wise, since as a system is new, that an overall like system-wide job analysis would have been a good thing to do, just to get an alignment.
Well, somebody
mentioned.
asked about that, Horel, and I
Yeah, it was
responded to that.
Yeah, it was
Somebody
mentioned.
asked about that, and I said that there are times when, depending on the size of the organization and depending on how much has changed, like for instance, how much it has grown and what is happening with the strategic plan, then yes, if they have not looked at the jobs in a long time, they might have to look at them again, not just from the performance management system standpoint, but even compensation in terms of how the incentives will work. But if it's not company-wide, sometimes we do what is called position evaluations. Hopefully Mrs. Lewis had spoken with you about that. But we do looking at specific positions that may be very effective based on the company's shift in terms of its strategic direction. Yeah. Is Jodianne here? I can't tell if Jodianne is here because, you know, there are some persons who have not come in this evening. There are a couple of persons who have not attended class this evening. Did anybody have apologies from anybody?
Yes, Miss. Nicola here. I was asked by Latoya to make an apology due to circumstances beyond her control. She couldn't make it to class this afternoon.
Jody is logged in.
She'll have to explain what's happening there. Okay, tell her to let me know because these are mandatory sessions and Jodianne is apparently not here. Okay, I still want some more. I still want at least 2 more questions. Jodianne, I now see her mic turned on. Jodianne, why are you not answering? She has muted her mic.
Yes, Miss.
Are you here, Jodianne? Jodianne?
Yes, Miss.
Answer. What question do you have?
Yes, I don't have any question.
What observations do you have? What did you think of the presentation, Jodianne?
I think it was a well-structured presentation. I did read the slides beforehand, so I could get a better understanding of what they would be discussing, even though I missed most of the presentation.
Why did you miss most of the presentation?
Because I have internet issues, so I'm always in and out. Or if it's showing that I'm there, I'm really trying to connect. So most time I have to use my data from my next phone.
Well, you'll have to try see how you can sort that out. Try and see how you can sort that out because we still have a lot of presentations to go in, not just in this class, we still have quite a few in the other class as well. Okay. Okay, let me see. Where is Abigail? Abigail? Is Abigail here?
Hi, good evening. Yes, Miss, I'm here.
Right. I've not heard a word out of you, Abigail, in neither of the 2 classes. What question do you have?
I'm here. I honestly have no questions because like Jody and I also got an opportunity to see the presentation before. And however, in terms of what is done for employees that underperform. So for example, the examples given, coaching and mentorship that was just in the question and answer section. That was pretty enlightening to me, but overall it was a well put together presentation, and I am good. I have no questions.
All right, I'm going to let you all out of this area, but be prepared for next week because I am going to do exactly what I did tonight if I'm not getting the questions and answers. Okay, all right, so good section so far, good section, okay. Let me go to my section here. Let me see, I have a couple of little notes. Overall, a very good presentation. I can see the work that was put in. I want to go to the slide for me, group, where we discuss specificity and context congruence and correctability, etc. Yeah. Okay. First of all, with correctability, I think that's on the other slide, right? Right. On correctability, you guys are saying that correctability was absent, but I disagree with you because basically, when they say that they're going to monitor, remember in the last part of the case, let me turn to the case here. Let me turn to the case. In the last part of the case, the company has indicated that it is going to monitor, right? It is going to monitor and correct any unproductive practices and implement correcting policies and practices. So that would indicate to me that there is correctability. Now, let me find the ideal characteristics here. Let me find the ideal characteristics.
Miss, just while you find that, in our readings, we also went ahead and read externally, and one of the things that we found was a common factor in most of the things that we saw was correctability was one of them, and one source said that there was no such process stated through which employees can challenge incorrect decisions.
I'm sorry, you said that you did what? You read what?
Yes, so we were doing we were doing some readings as it relates to correctability. And one of the things that I came up with, and this is just today that I was actually reading this one, and it said that there was no such process stated through which employees can challenge incorrect decisions. So this is the basis upon which we would have used one of the reasons that
that reading was specific to this case or another
case. Actually specific to this case.
And you have to be careful. You have to be careful. And that's exactly what I thought that you guys did. Because I'm picking up where you have been able to find some writings about this particular case. And you have to be careful how you use information like that. Okay, I see it in your Turnitin report as well. But you have to be careful how you use, because that is just somebody else's impression per se. But going in the context of what correctability means in general with performance management, correctability really speaks to the fact that if an error is made, that the company has a system in place to ensure that they correct those errors. So I disagree with any reading that you would have seen that says that correctability is impossible, because that cannot be true. I mean, as a matter of fact, I'm even working on a project now where the company is looking at the overall performance system because they realize that certain things are missing. They realize that the goal setting process is not what it should be. They don't have an appeals process. And if you even go back in your book, it even gives you an example of saying that, for instance, things like an appeals process indicates that there is correctability. because it means that the employees can challenge a rating, etc. So in looking at the case, you'll have to take the broad understanding here when the company says that there is a plan to monitor and correct any unproductive practices and implement correcting policies. So you'll have to assume that if they're getting complaints about unfairness, okay, if they're getting complaints about things not being done properly, like, you know, how even the incentives are arrived upon and stuff, then they have an intention to correct this, because it specifically says that. The sentence says there's also a plan to monitor for and correct any unproductive practices and implement correcting policies and practices. So how can you then say that Network Solutions did not have correctability? So you have to be careful what you're using as sources, to, you know, because what I realize that many of you will do, and you have to be, let me caution you, okay, is that you will go on the net and look up and you'll find some excerpts of some of the cases, always, because there are companies that sell the service of doing the case for you. So let me warn you guys, be careful when you're going to read about the case that somebody has written, almost like you'd say a judgment, or has written a report on the particular case, unless it is academically done. Be careful. Be careful, because what you just told me you saw, where you read a case and the person who has interpreted the case said it is almost impossible to have correctability. That is totally untrue, because when we speak about correctability, correctability can come in different sections of the performance management system. As I said to you, one of the examples is, as if networks had done this monitoring and found that they didn't have an appeals process, then that would be something to put in. That is correctability. Or if they found that goal setting wasn't being done properly, or if they found that training wasn't being done properly, or managers' ratings are unfair and that sort of thing. Correcting those things is correctability in the context of performance management. So we have to be careful with that. But I would say that correctability was in place based on that statement that was made in the case. There is an intention there to monitor the system and to correct whatever needed to be corrected, both from a policy standpoint, as it said, and from practices. And I had a similar feeling about ethicality, okay, as to why you would feel that the case was not ethical. I couldn't understand that explanation of that. So maybe you want to tell me again, why would you say that whatever the company was doing was not ethical?
Oh, Miss, I didn't do this section. I just did, when I responded about correctability is just something that I read today.
No, I'm saying whoever did it. Yeah. I'm asking.
Rashima, was it you or was it
So
Susan?
I did this section. Okay. So the basis for ethicality was the fact that the case did not explicitly say what was put in place to guarantee that supervisors would be able to objectively assess their employees' performance. So while I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry, I coughed, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, it was just from the perspective that while they would be trained and while you have all these processes monitoring, at the end of the day, there's no way to know that the supervisor is actually objectively assessing the employee's performance. There's a standard that is set, but at the end of the day, the supervisor has to choose to comply to that standard. But I'm open to your feedback.
Again, I disagree, because if you go back into the beginning of the case, into the second half of the case, where the company says that they're putting in a lot of training, okay, associated with the system, and they're also putting in the developmental planning area, They have indicated that managers are responsible for scheduling meetings, guiding employees, preparing for meetings, finalizing developmental plans, that employees are responsible also for participating in documenting their developmental plan. Both managers and employees are responsible for planning for meetings, etc., etc. I would tend to think that ethical behavior is here, because when we look at ethical samples, we look at ensuring that trying to ensure that, as you said, that people will do what they're supposed to do, within the law, set proper objectives, etc. And then it goes back again to the matter of the monitoring that they said, so that the company is again saying that they will monitor and correct anything that is not right, whether it be policies or practices. So to me, those are two ethical approaches. So I would not say that the company has not made efforts to be ethical in the rollout of this system. Okay. In your book, it speaks to ethicality in terms of trying to ensure, yes, that the supervisors do what they're supposed to do and keep the personal biases out of it. But I would imagine that if the company puts in a proper monitoring system, then these are the things that should come out. So in the recommendations, what could have been said there in the recommendations based on that concern that you have is that it is recommended that as part of monitoring, that, proper monitoring be done of the actual performance appraisals to ensure that biases and that sort of stuff are not in place. So you could have carried that through into the recommendations to expand on that, but I would not say that the characteristic is missing because of the approaches that are being used. So that was one thing that I personally disagreed with. I also disagreed with what was said. Go back to specificity and remind me what was said about specificity. What was said about specificity?
So for this section, we had said that the force distribution system measures the individual's performance against others in the same category. However, we would need to know how managers would rank employees in the same department who carry out different types of function. So I think a part of the challenge I'm having with this case and how we're interpreting the case is that a lot of what is communicated to me sounds like it falls under standardization versus specificity or the characteristic that we spoke about before. So I think maybe that's where I'm having a challenge with interpreting what should fall where, because for the most part, it reads like a standardized process versus it being the specific ideal characteristics that we're looking at.
I think specificity is there. I think specificity is there because if you interpret specificity in the context of performance management, it really speaks to how detailed the information is and what guidance the employees will be given about what is expected of them. And you're saying that you didn't see where it would be explained to the employees, or that they're clear about what is expected?
From a suit, because in my understanding, when we're looking at it being clear to everyone, it also means the person who will be evaluating the employee. So it should also be clear. So we would need to know that how we're going to measure all levels, even though they're within the same department, because the force system requires you to measure against your peers. So how do you measure someone who is on the same level within the same department, but they have different functions?
Yeah, but the case, when we look at a case, unless you are going to look at a case that's dealing specifically with measurement, the actual measurement formula, etc., would not be detailed out in the case.
Right.
So you know, this is not the case on measurement as such. This is really the case in terms of what is considered to be in the ideal system, etc. So I think that there is enough information in here to qualify in terms of specificity, because it has indicated that there's going to be individual objectives set for persons, and that it is going to be done at all levels, okay, all levels of the employees, and that it's also going to ensure that the performance expectations to the employees are clear. And that is one of the main tenets of specificity, to ensure that employees understand their expectations clearly. But I think that you can assume that they would have also explained the ratings, okay? Because it actually just points out the ranking system that they're using. But in terms of how the objectives are set for one job versus another job, that would be something that would be done department by department. I don't know if I'm answering it correctly.
Yes, you are.
But it wouldn't be set out in the case as to how they would manage X department versus X department, because apparently it's a very large company as well. Remember, it said in the beginning of the case that they had over 50 different performance systems.
Yes.
Which indicates to me that this must have been a very large company. Okay, they have changed the name of the company, but apparently it's a real life company. But so they're going to one system. And remember, I indicated to you in class at some point that where you have large companies with large departments, okay, you have to look at behavioral systems. So one of the things I would have picked up with this is to wonder if this company has very large amounts of employees, therefore they are going to a behavioral system, because the force distribution system, let me just go to a note I have here. Let me go to a note that I made here. The force distribution systems are usually used in the companies. And your book gave you two good examples of companies that were using the force distribution systems. Okay, they gave you General Electric, which I think I had even mentioned in one of the classes. Okay, and they gave you Yahoo to explain how they were doing it. Because usually force distributions are put in where there are large percentage of employees in a department. Remember, I spoke to you about things like a production line. So in the case, you wouldn't have seen it detailed out. It would have been a very, very long case if they had detailed out how each department was going to evaluate their employees. So, you know, from that standpoint, I'm saying to you that in the context of this case, I think that specificity is there, because it explained quite a bit in terms of the fact that, you know, the employees will be trained, the meetings, etc., just how the system would work, whatever. So that's just my perspective. I agree with you with regards to the context congruence. I agree with you, you know. I was a little concerned about, go to reliability. I was a little concerned about the explanation about reliability. What did you say about reliability? Who did that? I have notes here, but I can't go back through all the notes.
Cashel. Are you here, Cashel?
Yes, I'm here, Chantal.
What did you say about reliability? Because somehow I made a note here that I was a little concerned about how reliability. Oh, I remember what you're saying. You have to remember that reliability has to do with consistency. Okay? So I think how you explained it, tell me again what you said about reliability. Do you remember?
The rollout of the new process included communication and training of the standardized processes, along with the monitoring plan to check on the adherence. So the expectation is that if we're adhering to the process, we would see the expected outcome. So adhering to the process would give the reliability that is expected.
Okay, but you also have to remember that in the context of performance management, when we speak about reliability, it speaks about consistency of use. Okay, in other words, in a large company where you have several departments, multiple supervisors and managers, if you're going to roll out a single system, you want to ensure that if two supervisors provided ratings of the same employee, that you would see similar evaluation. So when you pilot the system, for instance, and you gave like the same scenario to two supervisors and told them evaluate this employee, you would hope that they would come up with the similar ratings based on the system being free of error, as it tells you, or the different tenets of the system are well in place. So as we look at reliability, remember that it also has to do with reliability of the ratings, okay, based on using the different parts of the system properly. Okay, so I wanted to just reinforce that no matter where I take the system across the company, it's supposed to be able to be used and be error-free. Okay. Okay, let me see, what other note did I have? It's just a couple notes that I had. Oh, where I think, I want to also point out again that you guys must be careful with your transitions as you're moving, especially where you have multiple persons doing a particular section. You need to ensure that your class can understand that you are you're in transition between this area and that area. But where I'm having a little difficulty is with your summary. And I need an explanation as to why you guys felt that you could just decide to just read a summary and your colleagues would understand and retain all of what was said in that summary. Chantal, why you gone off screen? Chantal?
Miss, we were just trying to, I guess, mention keywords to refresh what was said in the presentations.
Yes,
We were
yes. So if that was the intent, who's that, Marco?
Yes, Miss.
If that was the intent, it was more critical at this stage, more than ever, for you to have slides and notes up there. I don't remember a quarter of what you said. I can't even evaluate that section because I honestly, I'm going to have to get the recording from Ms. Thomas and play it back. Because, and I'm sure your colleagues, I would be surprised if many of them were able to retain anything from that. And that was such an important summary. The information you had was good, but you can't just get up and say, this is the summary and read off a whole slew of things like that. Just like if you're writing a report and you have each chapter has a summary, you can't just put on the word summary and say, read through the rest of the report to come up with what you think. You'd have to detail out the summary. I have to tell you the truth, I was really disappointed at that because I'm saying, I guess you guys figured in the essence of time, but it would have been better for you to put up those slides and said, with a small narration, said, we have provided here for you, a list of things, that we feel may be helpful in order to summarize the case, etc. So we have the next 2 or 3 slides for you to be able to refer to, especially the fact that I did not require any note pages for this presentation. So that was something that really should have been properly done. You can't just get up and rattle off for 5 minutes. you know, what took place in the entire case, not in a presentation form. So I'm a bit concerned about that. You know, I guess persons to even remember what you said, they might have to be able to pull down the recordings. I think Ms. Thomas is probably trying to put up the recordings, etc. But overall, a good presentation, and I can see where you put in the work. I look forward. I haven't read your case report yet. I look forward to reading that and stuff. I just want to tell you a couple of things. You're probably wondering, you know, and I've overall finished with the critique of the case. I mean, I have a couple more notes, but you know, that will be for me with my summations. You're probably wondering what's going to happen to your case reports, right? At the end of the course, when everybody has finished presenting, and at some point when I'm finished marking them, I will send back to each group your case report via the computer, because I'm going to be marking them online. And just so that for the future, you guys can have some learning from it, you know, like I will be marking, for instance, looking at the APA. I'll be looking at how you summed up the case. I'll be looking at your grammar and all that sort of stuff. So from a learning standpoint, at the end of the course, after I've completed all the markings of, you know, and all the presentations have been done, I will send those back so that you can just have it for future reference as you proceed through the rest of your courses. I know Miss Thomas indicated to you what are the most likely exam dates, and I don't know, did she tell you how it will work? Did she explain to you how it will work? Did she explain to you how the exams will work?
No, miss.
No, miss.
Okay, you're going to be given 48 hours in which to respond to your exams. Okay, so like for instance, 6604, if the dates hold true, will be the start on the 3rd and I think end on the 5th, 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. So like 9 a.m. today to 9 a.m. Today is what? Today is Wednesday, so it will be like
Friday.
9 a.m. today to 9 a.m. Friday. Okay, so that is how that will work. The questions will be posted up for you on Orville or UVRLE, and you'll be given, you know, you'll be told when they will be posted, and you'll be given 48 hours. You know, it will lock you out after that period of time. We're contemplating giving an extra half an hour to allow you when you are either uploading or when you're going in. There's something that we're thinking about, but those details will come out, you know, on that. I must say that both Miss Thomas and myself.
Sorry. The exam would be 48 hours, but what we will do is put extra time so that if anybody were foolish enough to try uploading at 2 minutes to 9,
right,
we will shut them out. But it is not that you can use an extra half hour. The system will shut you out, but it will allow you up to about 1 or 2 minutes to 9 to start your upload and not cut you off.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification, Ms. T. The other thing I was about to say is both Ms. Thomas and myself are a bit disappointed to see that some of you have never been on Orville. We have been looking at what your participation is. And when we see that somebody hasn't been on there for 57 days, it tells us that you basically haven't been there. Now, you have to remember that from time to time, we'll even post things up there. Plus, we put up information up there to help you. Ms. Thomas has put up a lot of additional information up there to help you. Some of you have never been on there. I've never been in Orville. And I guess because you heard me say that I don't have access now, but you know, you should know by now that I will find a way to get in there if I need to get in there. So Miss Thomas has access, and all I did was to go in there with her because I wanted to see what was what. And I've been able to see that many of you are not going in on there on a regular basis, which is also telling me that maybe you haven't even downloaded the book chapters and read them. Because when I see stuff like that, it's telling me also that many of you have not been on there, and this is why you can't participate. That was what led me to go in there and look at what the level of participation is, because I don't know if you know that the system shows us every time you go in there. Okay, it shows me exactly when you go in and when you come out. And I'm noticing that many of you have been in there maybe more than a month ago. Okay, some of you have never been in there. When 57 days is telling me that you've never been in there. And it shows us for each course. So I just wanted to issue a little note to you that it is something that we're looking at as well. And it is indicating to us as to whether you have a firm interest in the course. You should be checking to see if there are even messages, because there are times when we might decide to post a special announcement to you, etc. Now for this group, I saw your Turnitin report, so I'll be looking at that as well, okay? And you know, I'll be looking at the case, etc. So yes, you did the right thing by attaching the Turnitin report, not the Turnitin receipt, but the Turnitin report, to attach the paper that you put through and the Turnitin report and send that to me. That was very correct. So your package was well put together, okay? And again, you know, congratulations, like Philip said, to those who are ill and are still trying to be here. You know, that is quite admirable, you know, etc. So continue to get well. Are there any questions that you need to ask me? Anything you want to ask me, please? Anybody?
Yes, Miss.
Sure. Who's speaking?
Nicola here.
Yes, Nicola.
All right. When you were making your feedback, you were saying that the two connect. I'm sorry.
Correctability and
Yes,
specificity.
yes, that they were not really what should be what you were looking for the
Well,
answer.
they said that they did not exist. Remember what the question asked, you know, and that's another thing I probably should have mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, guys, group. You needed to have indicated that the 1, 2, 3 were the questions that were asked of the case.
Oh.
Okay. So what they were doing, Nicola, is answering these questions. So that would have been question, what question was that? That would have been question, let me see. That would have been, was that question 2 that dealt with that? What question, group, what question dealt with you thing there?
Sorry, let me see if I can just go back real quick. Oh, there we go. What question dealt with the features?
Right.
Question 2.
Question 2. Right. So question 2 asked what features were implemented that correspond to the ideal characteristics. So they were saying in their arguments that specificity and correctability were missing.
Yes.
Right? And
Yes.
I'm saying that I don't think it was missing.
So what is your what's your what's your answer, Miss?
I explained it. I explained why I didn't think it was missing.
Then what else is missing? Because I was of the view, I supported their views. That's why I'm saying that now. So
those were the 2 ones that I picked up that they said were missing, and I'm saying they're not missing. The rest I'm in agreement with.
Miss, I think she's asking if anything was missing from the system.
From the ideal system. Yes.
The two there. They gave the 2 that was missing. They gave the 2 correct ones that they thought was missing. I don't think there was anything else missing from the system. I don't think
Okay.
there was anything else missing from the system, or I would have pointed it out. I don't think there was anything else missing from the system.
Okay, Miss. So that's the ones that I saw too. That's why.
Yeah, I don't think there was anything else missing from the system. You know, and even in the question that was asked, was it who asked the question about the employees not being given a chance to improve? Was that Philip or Damien? Who asked that?
I think it was Horail, Miss.
No, man, I think it was Damien who
No.
asked the question.
It was who?
Damien. I think it was
Damien,
Damien.
yeah. Asked the question as to whether, you know, the company wasn't giving the persons a chance. And I answered that too and said, yes, they're given, because there's fairness again and what we call due process. And that was in place because, as I said, you know, they're given a time to improve their performance.
Okay, Miss.
No, those are the only 2 that they said were missing, and I am saying they're not missing. And I don't think anything else is missing.
Miss, just to clear it up and to understand, this is Michelle. So you're saying based on that question, you believe that there were no characteristics that were missing?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Okay, got you.
And they said they said that all the other characteristics. Can you put up that slide for me, Chantel? The slide that showed all the characteristics.
Oh, there we go. Oh, this one.
Right. See, they said all of those are the characteristics, right? Is that the slide? That's not the slide with correctability.
Oh, I thought you said all of them. This is the what? Yeah, correctability.
Right. So the slide before, go back to the slide you had before. And I guess maybe what is a little confusing is that the slide that you had before did not list correctability in there, right? You list all the features there, but it didn't carry correctability. Let me find that thing in your text. Specificity. I guess maybe what is confusing is that you presented the list here, but when you transitioned over there, you probably should have said that, you know, out of the, it's how many of them? It's 14 characteristics. So you should have said that these 12 are present, but these 2 are not present. There are 14 characteristics overall in the system, right? 14. And we found 12 of the 14. The 2 we didn't find was, go to the next slide. The 2 we didn't find was correctability and ethicality. I don't know if that is making it any clearer for you. And I'm saying that I feel that these 2 were there. So I do feel that all 14 have been displayed from what I can see. Who was asking me that question a while ago?
It was me, Miss. So let me just.
Me who? Who is me?
Sorry, Miss Michelle.
Michelle, okay.
So let me just ask another question just to
So do you understand? Do you understand what I was saying there now?
Yes. So you let me clarify, because other persons were asking the same question. You're saying that correctability and ethicality, they were not missing characteristics.
They are in the system, as from my interpretation. Yes.
Understood. But I did not know that this was linked to the next slide. So can you go back to the next slide? Or
this one?
Yes,
this one,
which is what I was saying.
So
which is what I just said.
Right.
That there are 14. There are 14 of them.
There are 15, Miss. 15.
Oh.
The book is saying
Not
15.
14. You sure? Don't let me count, you know.
The book says 14, but in your PowerPoint presentation, you have 15.
8, 9, 10,
It's
11,
14. It could be 14.
12, 13, 14. It's 15. It's 15 of them. It's 15.
12. But
I'm sorry, I said 14. It's 15.
But Miss, I'm seeing 12 here. If I'm 2, 4, 6.
Which one is
Because
missing?
right on this, we're talking about the features of the system that would correspond with the ideal system. So not all of them.
Understood. Understood. Thanks
Yeah,
for that.
but if there's 15 of them and you didn't find 15, then you needed to explain which ones are missing.
Miss,
Wait,
they mention it in the next slide. I think they mention it in the next.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Yes, it's in the next
So
slide, and the next
need
slide
that.
also mentions what we need more information about. So it's the 15 spread across 3 slides, answers the 3 questions.
Right, and I'm also saying that specificity is in there.
Right, you did say that.
Right, and I'm saying context congruence. I agree with you that context congruence may not be what you are saying about it here is that it wasn't clear in the case as to whether there was context congruence. And I'm saying I agree that it wasn't very clear. But the fact that they mentioned that they want to look at the culture, you could have stretched a little bit, but I agreed with you that it wasn't very clear as to what was the culture of the organization. So it was hard for you to say whether that was totally present. But I understand what Michelle is saying. If they were told that there are 15 characteristics and we're going to evaluate which ones
and that was the first thing I said,
are present or not present. Well, I missed that too. I missed that.
Yes,
too.
I understand that, but that was said.
Yes, Miss.
My apologies that it wasn't heard.
It was said, Miss.
So, Miss.
So next time when you're doing a slide like that, maybe you have to put up a block that says there are 15 characteristics. These 12 are very visibly present, and you speak to it, whatever. Because it's a lot of verbiage as well, you know, and sometimes hard for everybody to catch all of the verbiage. So you try to make your slides as clear as you can. Yeah, somebody has had their hand up.
Yes, Nicola here again. So can I therefore conclude that after 50 different systems, the 51 system works perfectly okay?
No, hold on. What are you saying, Nicola? Nicola, the company originally had 50 different systems.
Right.
And they realized that that was not working. So they abandoned those 50 systems and went to look at putting in a whole new platform. So it's not 51, so it's not 51 systems.
So then will the staff then, Miss, wouldn't there be some congruence? Would the staff be so open to trust this new system now, Miss, after so much different ones? So
well, you remember they have said how they, remember, let me go to the case. Remember they have said how they are trying to roll it out to ensure that there is buy-in. Remember they said in the that they have given a lot of instructions to management to ensure that the employees understand the new system and even why the new system, okay? And that that they're to stop the use of all, they actually went to say specifically that they told senior leaders that they're to stop the development and the use of any other systems and explain the need for standardization of the performance management across the divisions. So the staff shouldn't be confused, because they have issued directives to all managers in terms of how they should proceed. And in the recommendation, I think I heard something about maybe doing some more communications, which could be a good recommendation as well. But it specifically says in here that they received the support of the senior leadership in communicating that the performance management system was the future of the organization, And they encourage all senior leaders to ensure that those reporting directly to them understood the process and accepted it. In addition, they encourage senior leaders to use the system with all of their direct subordinates and to demand and utilize output from the new system. They also encourage the senior leaders to stop the development and use of any other performance management system and explain the need for standardization of performance management across all divisions. And they were also asked, all senior leaders were asked to promote the new program by involving employees in training of talent management and by assessing the needs of their divisions that would not be addressed by the new system. So they also asked them if any division found that they were not addressed, they must come forward as well. So a lot of work was put in. So it shouldn't be confusing.
You're saying that, Miss, they could easily trust this new system?
Well, if it is properly rolled out, it all depends on how it is communicated. If it is properly rolled out and stuff, but then remember also that the company has indicated in the end that they are going to monitor to see what's happening and take corrective action. And that's why I said that correctability is an intention there. So when you pilot a system at first, you know, especially after the first year, you go back and monitor and evaluate. And if you go back into other parts of your text, you will see how monitoring, when we spoke about defining measurement and doing measurement and stuff. Remember, there's a whole chapter on monitoring and evaluation, because that's very, very important.
Okay, Miss. Looking forward to it then.
Any other questions, comments? Well, the first team did a good job. I can see the work that was put in. As I said, for the presentation, I look forward to reading the case report. And I'll see, you know, how you actually ended up analyzing the case report, because that will also tell me how you came up with the recommendations that you came up with. So I'll be looking at that as well. Okay, well, another good night, and you know, Ms. Thomas, you can end the recording itself.
Okay.